We're really delighted to have this meetup. This is, I think, probably the best turnout we've had, so that's cool. So Rob Bailey's here from Road Monk to talk about we are videotaping, and if there's questions and such, I think the camera might turn around, so just any issues with that, I hope not, and just be aware that you may be on YouTube after this. So without further ado, one last thing is the Hoother is generous enough to let us use this room without any fees or minimum spends, but we do encourage everybody to order a drink or some food just as a thank you for letting us use the space. We don't have any budget in this group, so. And Anne-Marie has an announcement too.
We do actually have an announcement. So Manulife is hosting a meetup coming up soon in July the 25th. We do have flyers. It's called Agility in Action. And Andrew will be part of the panel. Andrew Bennett, who is formerly part of this group as well, as part of the co-champion of this group company. Along with Don Thornton, who is an industry expert, along with a couple others, Sue Johnston, Sean Button, and Melissa Roberts will be part of the panel discussing agility in action. So whatever challenges you're facing in whichever area you're trying to come join the discussion. There are free refreshments, light refreshments will be provided. It will be at Binghamton, on the 25th. So we are inviting the community to come partake and join us for the wonderful discussion, exciting discussion. And there's another event I'm promoting as well. There's Play for Agile, and I have cards here. That one is in September. It's in Cornwall, September 20th to 23rd. So if you're interested in either, come get some flyers and some cards.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Doc Norton would be a wonderful opportunity to get to meet him and listen to him. He's former CTO of Groupon, and now on his own, focused on building successful teams. He's one of those sort of unicorn guys who can sit down and write code with you or help you organize your company. So really pretty thrilled with this company.
Turn it over to Rob.
Great turnout. It sounds like this is the largest one, or largest turnout, you said?
Since I've been camping.
So that's pretty good. It seems like this is probably a popular topic then. So I guess my first question to the group would be, what are you looking to get out of this? I'm hoping I have slides, but I'm hoping I can tailor at least what I say around those slides to make sure that I'm addressing sort of the main reasons why folks found it,
Here's the best practices from other people in the room, what they find that works for them, that you thought.
Sure, challenges, best practices. We can do it as I go too.
World peace.
That's the room down the hall. That's the
presentation. Okay. So first off, a bit about me. I've been doing product management for 10 years across 5 different companies, most recently, currently with Road Monk as the director of product. At NetSuite, which became part of Oracle, I was a senior product manager. At MyOcean, I ran the product team. Took a brief stint at NDI and started my career at LiveHive. So you may recognize me from one of these brands. Anyway, if you're not familiar with what Road Monk does, we make product road mapping software for product managers and product teams. So I'm familiar with this space of Agile road mapping, as that is one of the primary use cases for our product. So through speaking with a bunch of our customers, designing and building products to solve these problems, we're pretty intimately familiar. In the room, I actually have 2 of our product designers, so this is Ian and Jeanette. So you can grill them with questions if you have any. Okay. I want to start off, I have a dirty little secret. So how did I end up at Road Monk when I used to despise road mapping? I don't know about everyone in this room, but when I first started my career in product management, and was asked to put together a product roadmap for my Agile team. And I went, what? Why do I need to put together, why do I need to tell you what I'm doing, what our team's working on in a year when like we're not going to be working on that anytime soon? You know, I don't even know what we're going to be doing 3 months out, let alone 6 months, let alone a year. Whatever I put on here is going to be complete BS. Like, what do you mean? And so I despise roadmapping. I've sort of boiled it down to, in my mind, I had two sort of competing voices. The one on the one shoulder was, you're an Agile team, right? Forget the plan and just get to work, build the stuff. Flexibility, speed, adaptability, keep up with the market, maximize the value you deliver per unit time, right? Like all those, Agile virtues. And on the other side, the business stakeholders were saying, well, we need to know when this thing is shipping. Like, is it shipping in 6 months or 8 months? And I would say, well, what is shipping, right? I can ship something that's called that in 6 months if you want it, but like if you want this to be good, we're going to need to, be a little bit more flexible on that. And so on the business side, though, I did understand the value of, being able to commit, selling off the roadmap or selling the future, and budgeting around, well, if I'm going to continue to invest in your team, then you have to tell me what you're going to use that money for. Otherwise, I'm not going to invest in your team. So yes, ultimately I came around and started to understand the value of road mapping. Does my experience resonate with anybody in the room? Yeah. Okay, good. So now I work at trying to solve this problem for everyone. Okay, so a lot of times you might hear, so we're Agile, like we don't need a roadmap, or we don't have a roadmap. It becomes very difficult if we take this stance to answer a few questions. And these are a few of many that you might come across. But like I said, how will you invest my money if you're going to tell me, we'll see what we're going to build. What can I tell this prospect who I'm trying to sell our product to, who's hung up on a feature that we don't have? Like, can I tell them it's going to be available in 6 months, or can I tell them it's never coming, or can I tell them it's coming in 2 weeks? I don't know. How will we become more competitive and relevant in the market? So where's our product going long term? Like, if you can only tell me 2 weeks or 2 months ahead of time, then I can't link that back to our product strategy and say, well, we're going to become more competitive by, building out this area of the product more to compete, with these competitors in these segments. So, what's the cool stuff that's coming? Like, can you tell me, what are the innovative features that you deliver? I hear that all the time in a leader product role. So you told me what's in the next release, but what's the innovative stuff? And what they're really asking is what are we going to put on the cut sheet, or what are we going to promote through our Twitter feed, and what are we going to really put our excitement behind on the marketing side. When we're done building this feature, what will we work on next? So you might hear this from the team. It's if you don't have a vision for where you're taking that product area, or that team's area of the product, you might get a little bit of you might get actually people leaving your team. I've had this happen where if you don't put a good enough vision in front of people as to where your team's area of the product is going, you might end up with, I'm leaving, and then in the exit interview, it's why are you leaving? Well, once we're done this project, I didn't really know, see what I was going to work on next. So I didn't really have a good reason to stay here. And it's there's good stuff. It's in the pipeline. We didn't tell you about it. And so that's that you don't want to get in that situation. Why should I keep on working on this team of products similar? There's many more, but you need a roadmap. But I'm sure you've seen this before. Our buddy Dwight, who we 100% agree with all the time on this point, Plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. So just have to remind our stakeholders about the first part of that the plans are useless, but we have to remind our teams that the planning is indispensable. And always remind everyone that the roadmap is a statement of intent and not a commitment to deliver. It's meant to convey where we are going directionally. It's not meant to say, because you put this thing on Q3 in the roadmap, it's coming out in Q3. All right, so let's jump in and talk about, sorry, I'm gonna pause for comments, questions, thoughts.
When does it become a commitment?
When does it become a commitment?
When it's done.
There are things, right? So you have certain things. We have, of course, cases where built into a contract, someone has said, like, you will have this feature by this date. Otherwise, you will give us a refund of this amount. Those exist. Agile waterfall doesn't matter. So there are commitments. Like, your business will make commitments. The trick is how you communicate around those commitments, right? And so the rep who's lost their commission based on that's not going to be very happy. But as long as the people around it, understand that it was a calculated risk that we took, that we might get there, but we didn't get there, and your boss and the boss of the sales rep and everyone is bought in that this was a calculated risk and we are agile and we may not hit that date, or the scope may change because of course it will. It's about communication, really. And this still applies. This is a statement of intent. Your business is making commitments off of your statement of intent, and they have to know that.
Or make the business not to commit to your statement of intent.
Yes. Ideally, get the business to not commit to your statement. But like, the more that you can ingrain this in them, the better.
I don't know which sales team you guys have worked with. I don't think that's not a language that they would understand. Like, as soon as something is on the roadmap, it doesn't mean if it's in the middle or not. Like, okay, yeah, we're selling it.
Yeah. Okay. So that's an interesting challenge and one that I've faced at every single organization. So as soon as your sales team sees something on the roadmap, they're selling it. So a couple things we can do there. What's that?
So why do you give them a roadmap?
Right. So a couple things we can do there, and I'm going to show a couple examples of what we can do for internal roadmap communication. And then there's public producing an external roadmap, which you give to them. But if they're an internal resource, they'll ultimately get their hands on the internal roadmap. Even if you
They're resourceful.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things, and it depends. You may have to get your organization to buy into a few of them, but I'll show you a fuzzy time roadmap, a agile-ish roadmap, and a few other examples that if you can sort of get your organization to buy into that idea of that structure for roadmap, it might help to communicate better where things are going to be fuzzy in the future. And so just give me a few slides and I'll get there. What else?
So the way I did it is, so we had several different things on the roadmap. There were things that were completed. Because you need to show people the roadmap even for stuff that's completed, because it's a communication vehicle for what you've done since the last time you talked. There's stuff that's in flight, so I've got people's names and butts and chairs working on it. There's the stuff that we're reasonably certain is coming next, and there's stuff that we're looking for input on. The thing I found is the roadmap is a great communication vehicle for understanding your customers' priorities. So if you have something that everybody leans forward in their seat for, you're much more likely to do it. And those were color coded. And to your point about the salespeople, you would have gotten fired at our company if you'd have modified the roadmap. Like it was, from a revenue recognition standpoint, all customers have to be showing the same thing. Otherwise, you end up contractually committing to something. So we just had those color codes in there, and that was an image that couldn't be altered. And that was a big part of my job, was meeting with people, highlighting the things that I thought they were most interested in. They would discuss them for a bit. We would take their input and decide whether it got into the next committed cycle or not. And just those 4 columns was all it took for color codes.
So sales leadership can be your friend there, especially if you can illustrate how they've been burned in the past and how.
So we
continue to
phrased it
burn.
as it was a commitment, but we didn't make 100% of our commitments. So we just don't know it that way. So we are committing to do this, and then you miss sometimes, and you get more than you thought, and you get less than you thought, and then you just explain those afterwards. We found that was easier than to try to be wishy-washy and say, I don't think anything. No.
You're okay.
The next guy in the room from the competitors.
It's okay. Plug it in. Just lost it.
Was this on the roadmap?
Foreseeing delays in the schedule here.
A problem with projections?
There you go.
Okay. Cool. All right. I'll pause again for more. So when making our roadmap, we want to make sure that it is complete. There's been too many roadmaps that I've seen presented by project managers where there's something that a stakeholder in the room expects to be on there that's not, and the entire meeting is derailed. So, one, complete is an important one. Realistic, yeah, you might as well not plan if it's not realistic. You want it to be realistic. Aligned, so you want it to support strategic objectives and make sure that you've got the stakeholder buy-in that you need. Flexible, it needs to allow for changing priorities at any time, especially with an agile roadmap. And time-bound, so the last two may seem counter to one another, but you have to have some notion of time. Imagine you had a roadmap with no time on it, or no notion of time in it. It would have all the things you could possibly build on it because there's no time constraint. So there needs to be some notion of time, even if it is fuzzy.
That explains my life right now. All the things.
Yeah, all the things.
And I looked at it, I was like, this is
Yeah.
about 3 years of work, I think.
Yeah, there you go. Realistic.
Yeah, just my quick question was about complete in terms of that being
Yeah.
challenged on that.
Yeah.
I find that a lot of times you get stakeholders challenging whether this is really complete. Have you guys thought of anything?
Yeah.
So how do you provide that confidence level back to your stakeholders, other than stating that this is the knowledge that we have today and a current understanding what the product is and where it's going to go, this is the completeness of it? What else could you put in terms of language and give confidence to your stakeholders that way that it's complete?
Right. So what we've done in the past is, so you present the roadmap that you want to present, and there's stuff that just can't fit on there. There's stuff that it's just the long tail of things, right? You're gonna know if you've done enough socialization ahead of time what those things are. So make another slide afterward that says notable omissions, and you walk through that and you say, this isn't on the roadmap because, this isn't on the roadmap because, this isn't on the roadmap because. You may not spend a lot of time on that slide, but if it's not there, it can be a problem. That would be my recommendation.
I see. So not only just focusing on what is in the roadmap, but what's excluded from the roadmap to kind of get the whole picture that you have thought
Yeah.
about everything.
Exactly.
Okay, that's fair.
Is it product management is more about what we're not doing versus what we are doing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Do you see like the top half and the bottom half are like opposing elements or forces that compete with each other, and like what do you do with that basically, right? Like realistic and aligned,
Yeah.
does that compete against flexible and time bound, and that tension between the two?
I mean, it's not necessarily. So you're saying, complete and time bound might be in
The
conflict with each
realistic
other.
and aligned, right? And the flexible and time bound. You
Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, it's gotta be all of them, and it's a balancing act, right? And when I get into like the steps for, getting to your roadmap, there's sort of like 2 socialization cycles, and that really helps to get out ahead of and mitigate a lot of that, and say, hey, so this is what's realistic, get all your concerns and frustrations about that out now, and then when you go into the meeting with 15 stakeholders and present your roadmap, there should be no surprises in there. Everyone's already seen it. They've already voiced their concerns to you, and so you don't end up with this spiral of, oh, what about this and what about that, and what if we took these resources and moved them to here, and then we work on that. Like, you could try to get as much of that out of the way in advance as you can, and circle back and say, hey, I've listened to your concern on that. I've heard you after on our conversation. We did some more analysis on it, and this is what we concluded. So at least they feel heard and considered.
I have a question. So, how frequently should the roadmaps be presented? Like, this is a very basic question.
Yeah.
Is it per 3 months, per release, per sprint, or as a project?
Depends on your organization, and it depends on the purpose of that particular roadmap. So one of the things I haven't touched on is that you may actually have more than one roadmap for your thing. You may have the roadmap that you present every quarter that has a 2-year time horizon, and you might have a roadmap that you update every month that has a 4 or 5 sprint horizon. And you may, and so it just depends on what you're trying to communicate and to whom.
But if you're getting a roadmap, say that covers a year's activities, or say 6 months activities, the roadmap should be consulted with the team first on what they can commit to, rather than coming out with a roadmap and then the team realizing, oh, okay, this is what we're dealing with.
Yeah, for sure. The team should come with the realistic plan together, being informed by the priorities. Because you don't want to be trying to plan, oh, what if we did this thing, and then it ends up that thing that doesn't even make your roadmap, right? You're wasting planning cycles there. You want to come in with the priorities and then start from there. But yeah, your whole team, it's a whole team activity. It's not a product manager at their desk activity.
So how would you help address this if I have to put a team for the activities that the team doesn't know, how do I approach this situation? I'm just trying to think out of the box, like how do I approach it?
Can you elaborate on the situation? So you've got a
say there is a project that has a 2-year activity.
single project, 2
Single
years.
project.
Okay.
But how do I commit to something I don't know what will happen in 2-year time frame? Like,
Right.
how deep down in detail should that be? Because the roadmap will change.
Yeah. As you get farther and farther out, use less granularity is ultimately what it
So
comes
the
down to.
first roadmap that comes up is very high level.
Yeah,
Is
but it should be low level in the near term. So you may actually have two roadmaps. You may have the high level 2-year, and then you may go, this quarter, this is how we're doing. This is what we're doing.
Did you notice a difference between a green and a brown project when it comes to road mapping?
Sorry, define green and brown.
Yeah. Oh, the green is a brand new project,
Yeah.
and the brown is evolving a product with new features and versions. Like that. Usually startups are green.
Yeah. So we recently did this actually, and usually the green project ends up being, it's a line item on another roadmap initially. So it's way down there, and it's like, yeah, we're gonna do something around this area in a year. And then as you get closer to the year, and you actually try, as soon as you try and staff it, it needs to be broken down. That's generally my rule of thumb, is like, we're about to go staff this thing. What are we gonna be spending our money on? Is the question, and that's the question that the roadmap helps to answer. So you say, all right, so we have new project X. Okay, so that's originally a line item on the, this product line's roadmap. Oh yeah, Project X, way down there. And then we get closer to Project X, it's like Project X. We started to do some work on figuring out what Project X is, and Project X is really big, and we're actually going to need its own team to go and do it. So we're going to start hiring a team in July. But in order to justify hiring a team in July, we need a little bit more from you, product and design and engineering around the definition of Project X. So you start to go, all right, well, we think roughly it's going to be, it's going to be this. We got some wireframing, we got some design validation, we got all this stuff going on. Okay, so we think Project X roughly is this, and our initial, first version of Project X, we've kind of got that. We have a rough idea. We planned our initial version of Project X. Now we're ready for our money. So you show the roadmap for initial version of Project X. And then you say, we don't actually know after that, we're going to figure it out as we go. And if that's not sufficient, you may need to do a couple of different phases. Phase 1 this, phase 2 that, phase 3 that. And as you know, as you get into it, you kind of have to keep your stakeholders alerted, but phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 that you originally defined are going to be out the window as soon as you start, as you know. But at least you've put some shape around it. Planning is indispensable. The plan is useless. It's that. Does that help?
One question.
Yeah.
So I've got one comment to your long-ranging future. It's going to sound like a broken record to people who work for me, but the second you ask the question, is there more than one possible outcome a year from now, then you're no longer in a world where you can say this is exactly what's going to happen. You're in this, the future is not a point, it's a shape.
Shape, yeah.
And you need to do some probabilistic planning or modeling to provide ranges for people to work with. And there are techniques, not for tonight, but there's ways to sort of model the future in ways that allow people to not necessarily accept it, but at least reason with it. And say, okay, I understand your assumptions, I understand the constraints, and I can see some possibilities here.
All right. So without making this, I'm going to try to avoid pitching our product here, but I am going to show you a couple templates from our product. It's awesome. So this is part of a traditional roadmap template. I know, so 1.1, think of that as like release 1.1, and we're going to do some things, demo staging as it relates to the infrastructure, swim lane. So this is more like a traditional roadmap that you'd expect to see. It's like we're going to work on this thing for this period of time, or this theme for this period of time, and it's going to be part of X release, and it's going to deliver at this time. So we're all familiar with this type of roadmap. This type of roadmap leads to some of those conclusions on the sales team that we were addressing earlier. It's like, oh, well, it looks like they got it all figured out. Like, front-end prototype, yeah, it seems like they got that whole thing planned out, and yeah, it should deliver in March. Cool. All right, I'll put that in my mind. Middle of March for front-end prototype, and next time I'm talking to the prospect, I'll just say, oh yeah, it's coming in the middle of March. Cool. So it leads to the wrong thinking. Your organization may require you to produce one of these. That's fine. I'm going to suggest a couple of alternatives, and so one of the techniques you use to get some of the if you like some of the alternative roadmaps I'm going to present, one of the techniques to get your organization ultimately to convert is give them what they are asking for, and then give them what they actually want. So do both. Do the one that they are demanding, and then do the one that they actually need as the next slide. Oh yeah, I just was playing around, and this is a different way to visualize the roadmap. Do that enough times, people will go, oh, well, I don't want to see the timeline one anymore. I want to see the other one, and eventually you might be able to get your organization to convert. Anyway, so there's a couple other ones to consider. So the fuzzy time view. So this is what we're doing, what's up next, what's beyond that. Very simple. Swim lane by sort of your product areas or your objectives or your whatever. You can swim lane this by whatever dimensions make sense. So if you want to do, if it makes sense to do, new features, stickiness, integrations, sure. If it makes more sense to do product area X, Y, Z, sure. If it makes more sense to do, KPI, or metric, key metric, A, B, and C. I would do as many of those as make sense for your audience, and depending on who you're sharing this with, you may need different granularity, you may need this to be a different time horizon. Your definition of soon here, depending on how big these items are, can be quite long, right? And so, but that's sort of the subtext of the communication, right, around this roadmap. When you're presenting this, you go soon. Yeah, so really this stuff's in the way of starting that. We should be able to start that around this time, and roughly we think it's going to take this long. So, integrated prototype. So don't expect anything here until way after that. It's a more fuzzy definition of time, and this works quite well still for alignment. The other one I was talking about was the agile-ish view. So this is kind of, remember how I was saying, be more vague and high level on the farther out stuff, and be more granular and concrete on the near term stuff. This is that. So you go, all right, in Q1, these things, because we're pretty close with those. Like, we've got them really well defined. We're pretty sure they're going to deliver this. These things are going to deliver in Q1. In Q2, we get a little bit more uncertain, but still pretty good. If we're not sure that something's in Q2, we might just bump it to soon, just to like buffer ourselves there a little bit. And then soon has no time horizon. Soon could be Q3, it could be Q4. Depending on how long it takes, you may be Q1 next year. We don't know, and that's what this is communicating, that we don't know. So you may have a tough time with some of these getting your organization to buy in, but if you can, it really helps. This is a more granular, so when I was saying, if you're operating on a very long, if you do like a 2-year roadmap and then every month you update a 5-sprint roadmap, just to say tactically this is the stuff that's coming out now, and release over release, this is when you'll see it. This type of thing works really well. And theme-based. So remember how I said, all roadmaps must be time-bound? I broke my rule, except I didn't, because so dimension number 3 is time. So you say, like, this is the Q3 theme-based roadmap. So in Q3, we on the web app under we are shipping these new features and these stickiness features and these infrastructure features and these improvements features. That's what we're aiming to ship in Q3.
Are you saying that this one is going to go with the other foreign-based one? Like this
Right. So you
could.
could. Right. So there's nothing stopping you from going. All right. So really high level. These themes in Q3, Q4, and soon and future. And then next slide. Okay, deep dive on the quarter that we're about to embark on. Right. This is a more granular view. And can you see how our release is balanced? Right. We're addressing this business objective and this business objective across these areas of the application. Right. You see how we're balancing the objectives, over this quarter as to how we're evolving the product. Right. Helps to link it to the business strategy. Like, if you can say, if one of our strategic objectives is, stickiness of our application, if we're like, our product needs to be stickier, you're going to get the question, what are you shipping this quarter to improve stickiness? And you can go, let me pull up my roadmap. Look, all this stuff is what we're planning to do to ship on stickiness. Yeah.
So roadmaps, the way I look at them is kind of like a translation layer between execution and planning.
Yep.
This middle layer between the why and the how.
Yeah.
Some of the challenges I've had with roadmaps, and maybe people would have some opinions on how to solve them, is because they're not just meant for visibility and communication. Those are just nice words to say, like, I'm doing work, so keep paying me. But I'm actually using them to plan the work of the actual engineering, which is more development. And in order to come up with a roadmap, kind of like what the point that was made before, you need to plan elements of it before actual delivery. So how do maybe people use roadmaps? Because it's basically like an integrated waterfall in a way, because each one of those features goes through a whole waterfall cycle of, you know, requirements, concepting, design, and only later it actually maybe some reprioritization and then development, testing, and so forth.
Okay, so we're saying how. Okay. So
This is delivery roadmap,
this is the delivery road. Yes.
but it doesn't also funnel back to the actual work that needs to get done before you.
Oh, you're saying how do you say this thing is in the planning phase? Now this thing is in the initial development phase. Now this thing is in the. I don't have a slide for it, but what the thing we just implemented at Roadmonk.
That was actually great.
Sorry, the thing that we just implemented as the. No, sorry, not within our product. This is we were able to do it with our product, but in terms of process-wise for us, the thing we present at every monthly town hall meeting is what I've called the initiative funnel. And basically, think of it like a sales funnel. It's like you've got all the things you could possibly do at the top, and at the next layer you're analyzing them, at the next layer you're designing them, at the next step. And like a sales funnel, things can fall out of the funnel at any time. Like with your sales funnel, your customers could bail on you, right before they sign the deal. And so what we're trying to communicate there is there are various, like each of the projects are in the various phases. We also use it as an external communication guide. So, hey, if something's an idea, you have a certain way of communicating externally about it. If something is in build, you have a very different external communication approach, right? And we use it also to sort of align teams around, hey, this project is in whatever phase. Oh, hey, look, it's on our roadmap in this quarter, and it's only in analysis phase. We better hustle that project, right? Or like, hey, this one's been sitting in design for forever. What are we gonna do about this? Does this need to go, or what are we gonna do, right? So that's one of the approaches. But yeah, you can always do this is the project and these are the phases type of thing. But it does start to feel very waterfall. I once told a vendor that our company was waterfall in planning and agile in execution, and he really liked that. But that's kind of it, right? Yeah.
But usually that's the case when you have projects, for example, that involve hardware.
Yeah.
Or if, NASA, for
Hardware's a
example,
different
would
beast.
not go agile 100%, yeah.
Hardware's a different beast.
It is like this. That's Agile. I was talking before here. I'm interested to know like if there's more people who deal here with hardware projects.
Yeah, who deals with hardware projects?
It's the same thing as water cycles.
Yeah.
And it has the word hard in it for.
It's got a lot less complexity.
So here's an interesting future topic for the Agile group would be with rapid prototyping and 3D printing and stuff. How do we implement Agile practices into hardware development in terms of rapid prototyping and feedback with like a real thing you can touch and feel. Anyway, I had an idea for it. No, I will not be covering that in this session. There you go. Okay, anyway. Move on or more? Yeah.
Do you think showing progress of a project like in this kind of view, is that too much information, or is that something separate, or would that be about like progress, because that's kind of the stages, every project has 5 stages and it's on stage 2 out of 5, 4 out of 5 or something?
Yeah, so I haven't really touched on the project tracking part of this, right? And it's interesting because once we produce a roadmap, it's like, here's the roadmap, and it goes in a slide deck, and then right after the meeting, that slide deck is stale, and and like no one looks at the roadmap again until it's roadmapping time again, right? And it's interesting because like if we get into, all right, now look at your, pull up your roadmap again, and now you've got 60% complete on this thing that we said was going to ship in this quarter, and it's like the end of the quarter, so we're not going to do the rest of the 40%. That's good visibility too. So yeah, there is a relevant use case for that. Interesting that one of the product designers at Roadmonk brought that up because that's one of our features that's coming out. Stay tuned. I'll stop with the product pitches. All right. Crafting the perfect roadmap. Listen, so since last roadmap, have the objectives changed? Business objectives, strategic objectives for your product strategy. Are there new market forces, new sales objections, any compliance or regulatory changes? Who dealt with GDPR? Everybody? Probably?
Oh, yeah.
GDPR? Yeah. Okay. 2, prioritize. Think no two things can be equal priority, so you want to try and bubble sort and force rank them. First round of socialization. Do your stakeholders agree with the priorities? Yes or no? We're not talking about timelines, we're talking about what's more important than the other thing. We're not talking about, oh, but we can do those two things at the same time. Cool, what's more important than the other one? Don't care that we can do it. We probably can, and that's the next stage. What's more important than the other one is what you're having. Estimate, understand your top stuff, how long it's gonna take. Socialize again. Now we know, all right, we can do these two things at the same time. But, you know, and then if we do this one, then we're gonna have a later start on this one and you're playing the Tetris game. So socialize the Tetris game. And then finalize, present, pause for applause, and repeat. So the reason I say repeat, that's probably the most important part of this is, like, it's gotta be, we've gotta be doing the listening part, the prioritizing part, and even number 3, the socializing part, regardless of how often your road mapping cycle is, all the time you have to be doing 1, 2, and 3. Ideally, you're doing all 6 all the time, and you have a product for that if you're interested in checking that out. But ideally, you're doing all of those all the time. But you get what I'm saying. You know, you got to be always listening, always socializing, always reprioritizing, as you all know. Yeah, steps for crafting a perfect roadmap.
Maybe you're getting to this.
Yep.
So about the prioritizing, and I'm referring back myself to a product owner I worked with 2 or 3 years ago. That's, you say, well, what's most important out of this list? Oh, it's everything. I gotta have everything.
Yep.
Everything's number 1.
If you ask me for everything, you will get nothing.
Yeah.
Are you doing the COD at that time?
Then you
Cost of delay? Like,
years sometimes.
are you suggesting to do the cost of delay when you are doing the practice?
Which delay? Sorry.
Cost of delay?
Oh, yeah. Interesting. My philosophy on it, and we can probably debate this for a while, but my philosophy on it is, if you've got the stack rank, this is more important than this, which is more important than this, which is more important than this. When you get to the sizing, if you're not doing the most important thing because it's too big,
From the business,
find a way to do some of it. Do you know what, like, you know, because ultimately, if you keep kicking the can forward and going, this thing is really important, but it's too big. All right, let's kick it forward. All right, let's do a bunch of things that we can do. All right, now let's prioritize again. Oh, that thing's still most important? Yeah, no, too big. Kick it forward. Do that enough times and you're done, right? So that's the thing, is you got to find a way, right? And so my philosophy always has been do the most important thing, you know. And so you may have some other constraints, obviously, right? There's always, hey, we committed to this. We've got, you know, we've got a several $1 million of contracts tied up in this, and we need to deliver this quarter. Well, guess what? That means it's the most important, right? So it all comes back to like either you got the priorities wrong, or you know you're trying to ship more stuff. You're trying to make it look like you're shipping. Sorry, you are trying to ship more stuff. And my philosophy always has been ship the most important stuff. Don't ship more stuff just for the sake of shipping stuff.
Prioritization that I've done in the past is like I always plot it on effort versus value.
Yeah.
And I put value as money, once people understand money, and effort as like 9 months, and then it makes it like, and I think people take the ratio between the two, and then the prioritization is hard to argue with. They can argue with the numbers, which is valid, but the relative importance is just it's math.
It changes the conversation. It says it's instead of, well, that's higher priority than that.
Based on
It's,
data.
right. Instead, it's, well, okay, let's dig in. So I rank this as 7 on impact. Oh, well, I think that's a 5 on impact. Why? That's the value.
The problem that I've had with
Yeah.
those rankings is it's
Yeah.
relative. I don't want to, because opinions within organizations,
Yeah.
you can have this, you know,
Yeah.
okay, you think it's a 7, I think it's a 5.
Yeah.
But if you can put a number to it, how much revenue is going to be generated from this feature,
Yep.
or how much
Yep.
recovery is going to be done?
Yep.
It's just easier.
It's a lot of effort, but if you can do it, it's great. It's a good way to do it.
Or pull those numbers out of behind.
Yeah.
It works this way.
Do you socialize items that are more like technical tasks, maybe switching to a newer technology where you're not going to have any additional user features, or?
So, tough question to ask. Maybe on the product management side, but I'll do my best. So, okay, so typically what we'll do there is say, all right, yes, so we will roadmap the technical stuff. The investment on the technical stuff is an interesting one, because so ultimately it's, hey, what percentage of engineering resources do you want to allocate to this? Is typically the discussion, right? It's like, hey, so, okay, let's make a team that's, comprised of this many people, and if we do that, we can move X fast on it. Okay, let's look back on the last quarter where we had that team working on that thing. Did we make enough of a sizable dent that we're comfortable that we want to reduce resourcing there and move them back onto other work, or do we want to increase resourcing there because we're actually falling farther behind? So that's kind of how I view but basically I'm viewing it from the point of like, who do I get to build features with and who do I not, right? So I'm kind of limited in terms of my my perspective on that.
Again, my question is more though, would you socialize that work to customers?
Oh, yeah. Oh, to customers? Depends. Is it going to make an impact on them? Like we have, I don't want to open the kimono too much, but we have system performance as an objective for us, and I would share that with customers. I would say, yeah, we're allocating X percentage of our development resources on system performance, and they probably won't care to understand, well, we're refactoring this library over here to blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't think your customers are all going to care about that, but it's ultimately being able to reassure them that you are focusing on it. I would treat it similarly like to a feature in terms of external communication. Right? Our feature is improving performance, and, well, you're going to improve my page load time by X percent. That's very hard to say, but you can say we are investing heavily in it, and that's usually reassuring. That's good money.
You could also charge them development.
Yeah, you could. You can. That does put a wrench into some roadmaps, though, because you're committed, right? And to go back to sometimes, and so I should have put that on. Oh, I should have added that to compliance/regulatory. Commitments should also be things you listen for. Commitments that we've made. Try to reduce those, but they do exist, and they do force you to do certain things with the roadmap. this was actually my last slide. So we've had some good discussion. Yeah.
When you're talking about the big items that are like top priority that are significant,
Yeah.
is that really you're looking at fuzzy time, or is that more you're talking about you actually need to spend more work looking at what it is?
That's
before
always
you put it
been
there.
Yeah, that's always been how it's done. Is like, so if something's gonna be, if it comes back, it's like, oh, that's 3 months of work. How did you determine it was 3 months of work, right? Are you just like throwing the thing in the air or what? Okay, so 3 months of work, let's break that down, right? And as soon as you say let's break that down, you end up with smaller things, right? And then you end up with, oh, well, we're gonna do this thing over here. It's like, okay, that has no value. Okay, and we thought we were gonna have to refactor this into this other thing. Oh yeah, sure, but how much value does that have versus some of the other features we can prioritize? So you end up with this big thing ends up being this small sliver of value and a whole bunch of bloat that you've discovered through the course of digging in and breaking it down, right? So you end up with a small thing, and that does make you top, and the other things make somewhere down on item 20 to infinity or gone. Yeah, exactly.
It seems like all the roadmap stuff is dealing with adding functionality or features. But do you have a way of removing things? And is it a bigger part of it sort of more important when you're removing than when you're adding?
Yeah. So there's the in-product part of removing, and then there's the rest of it. And so a lot of the legwork for removing is the discontinuation stuff, right? Like the business side and the operational side of discontinuing a part of it, depending on what it is. But yeah, that should make it onto your roadmap. Remove blah should make it onto your roadmap.
Is it harder to communicate to people, or is it like what parts get really kind of confusing when you start to remove it around it?
So I have some experience in that. So one of the things we ran into was a contractual issue there. So what we would do is we would explicitly communicate on the roadmap, deprecate it, and it would be deprecated for some period of time, and then it would be removed. You could also run into a revenue recognition issue if the customer claims that's why they bought the product, and then that could in turn require you to continue to support the previous version for up to their contracts. That's how we did it. We just explicitly mark it deprecated, and we used a different color for that, so it stood out a little bit.
Right, so I mean, from what I heard from the description, is that the communication is much more important than that statement, because if you have some sort of contractual obligation or the customers get upset when you start doing stuff, what happens?
Well, I was much less worried about like if somebody gets a contract out and their lawyer looked at it, you're in much deeper trouble than you want to be. So your issue is more the vast majority of your customers that don't have a contract that would be shocked if the thing they're using disappeared in the next version and found out either because read the change log or didn't. So you want to.
How do you get that feedback before you actually remove it?
Well, so a big part of my role was, the roadmap would be something I would communicate. All products were snapped to a quarterly grid. All roadmaps were updated on that day. The whole organization was communicated to, and everybody sung from that song sheet for the next quarter. And then you go and you explain it to people. So if you're planning to remove something, it's not happening in that quarter. You're marking it down as you're going to. And then if a lot of people squawk, you may alter that decision depending on what business reasons it was made for. So maybe you have a supplier that's going to discontinue that. You're going to have to work really hard to find a new supplier. You were thinking maybe you wouldn't. But that would be part of that communication. And then that would be fed back from the organization. And then you would decide what to do with that information.
And you found that people actually squawk before it disappeared? Functionality disappeared? Because my impression is that even if you said, oh, we're going to deprecate this, a lot of the people who would get upset if that gets entered. Only get upset when it actually disappears, not when it's
no. It would always happen because I didn't hide it. It was in a different colored font. You couldn't.
But they might not know that they're using those pieces.
Have you been able to do any scans to kind of find usability? Because that's sometimes an area where you can see what to deprecate is nobody's using that for high cost of maintenance, keeping it. Is that depending on the role.
My experience
So that's
was,
part of the communication, right? So that would be something where you know what your customers are using, what parts of the functionality they're using, and how much. And then you can figure out what you can.
my experience was between visiting a couple of different people in the customer and their account team, somebody would squawk if they were using it. You didn't get through all of those defenses. One person might miss it, maybe two, but somebody would squawk. So sometimes you have to then alter what you're going to do about it.
Well, I think the thing that you're deprecating has to actually be seen as a feature. Someone might just decide we're going to cut this little thing down here that, a widget somewhere that isn't seen as a feature, but some customer thinks it's a feature, and then they squawk when they find out it isn't working anymore.
You may be talking more about the difference between a feature and maybe it wasn't working as it was designed and now you're correcting it. It used to do 1,000 transactions a second, now we corrected it. The spec sheet was always 900, but you were kind of relying on the old behavior. It didn't used to check the password here, but now it does. That's a much harder I never found it was in our interest to try to hide the roadmap. That was why, like it or lump it, I'd rather have the entire organization with the same sheet in their hand and they can't change it. So I know they're not going to a customer and saying, don't worry, I'll get this changed, or going and airbrushing out the thing that was unpopular.
How much education did you do on what that roadmap item was? So sometimes we had that kind of fuzzier thing that you had on the roadmap, and sales took it to mean, whoa, and the intention of it was this. And just by did you do a lot of education when that came out?
So we had a direct sales force of about 220 people in 30 countries. So we did 2 webinars, both Monday morning with movies and Monday afternoon with movies, in which everything new was put in there. The roadmap was presented at each of the regional sales conferences, which occurred quarterly, and at the global one, which occurred annually. And if they had someone like Dee come to their customer, they had to show up too, and they would either see it for the first time from the customer or not. There was a lot of effort spent on sales education there, like a lot. So that was our big communication vehicle. This is what we're planning for the future. This is what we're certain we're doing. This is what we believe we're going to do. This is what we think we might do, and we're looking for a lot of input on. We didn't always hit the ones that we were sure we were going to do, but I found it was easier to have everybody pitch the same message until it changed, rather than having individual teams change it. Because that shopping for answers was terrible. You come back to the support team and they get a different answer to the sales team, and it just didn't work.
What else were you hoping that today was covered that has not been covered?
I've got a question for something you were just saying. What if you've got a customer appreciate, I think everyone here appreciates in context of our roadmaps, the product roadmaps, is trying to give everyone something. Inevitably you get to the customer, well, yeah, you did all this stuff, but nothing that you do and I want.
Yeah.
How do you deal with it?
So I ran into that problem a bunch. So what would either happen is either A, something that they wanted would always be in the next column. Every time you meet with them, it's still in the next column, and they get kind of grumpy. So what you might do is you might spend more time polishing things that wouldn't have made it to the customer-facing roadmap. Like you said, holistic, but that was unrealistic. We had 400 developers. Like you would be miles long. I never managed to get through more than 20 minutes of roadmap presentation, so you had to be selective. So you might go and polish something that you knew they wanted, even though it didn't really normally make the cut. You might sometimes just take it in the paycheck and you discover that they wouldn't expand because they felt you weren't meeting their needs. And then that might cause your effort to prioritize them to be a little bit higher.
Is anyone facing death by customization? So you have the large client that comes in, we want this, and all those other soon become future, and everything else kind of flows out. And anybody got some mitigations?
It's not necessarily panacea. So everybody has a Pareto effect. You've got a couple of customers that are a lot of revenue in any one time frame, and they're sometimes loud, and their salespeople are loud. And the first thing that I did is we never maintained a separate branch of software for anybody, period, just flat. And we just never, ever agreed to do a separate release for one customer, because that leads to absolute integration hell. Because now their branch is old and a new thing isn't on it or things like that. And that caused a set of other pains by having that decision. So that could cause some commitment you made to a bunch of people to suddenly become retracted, which was really embarrassing. It could, so the roadmap that I portrayed wasn't the execution plan. So when somebody said in a meeting, look, you got the deal today, if you say yes to this, yes or no. And you're like, all right, well, I'm gonna go make some noise back home, and the execution plan will change. But anyway, that was my learning, is never ever do a separate release just for that, because it's gonna be easier. Maybe there's 3 other things that are half done and you can get this out sooner. It never paid off for us. We just always said everybody is on the same version and everybody else will take the long time. The other thing I found is the roadmap was a great tool to push times out. So prior to initiating the strategy, what I found is if you allowed your salespeople to make commitments in the room, and the customer's like, when is this thing coming? And as soon as there's no specific date, it's ASAP, it's tomorrow. When they have a document that says this is coming out 4 months from tomorrow, it's much easier to sell them on waiting for a specific date than we're doing our best, because they honestly believe you're going to skate that forever. So we managed a lot better by just picking a time that's as far in the future as we thought we could get away with, and then selling them hard on that date being the right date. Now sometimes you missed it because they had some external thing that, like I had one customer that it was needed for their back to school promotion, and he looked me in the eye and said, do you think back to school is going to slip this year? I'm like, right. But you know, that was my strategy. Is the roadmap was a much better tool to convince a customer that it could be later than they thought, because you went in there with a date already. And then instead of them thinking they could get it tomorrow, they're arguing about whether 4 months or 3.5 months is reasonable.
Does anybody use the themes on the roadmap to later kind of identify?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. I don't have any more slides. I'm just standing up.
I was gonna say, does anybody use like themes on roadmap so they can kind of look back to see that customization that you spent so much effort on, and kind of the parallel that, yeah, you delivered to some of those larger squeaky wheels pain points, but this is the kind of capacity or the volume that took out, and to kind of drive yours to listen and hear their needs, but then reflect it to the greater audience of your customer base.
So I used it, but I used it for a different purpose. So we found you got a lot better bang for the buck by delivering a lot of things in a theme. So the roadmap for some quarters was skewed towards the themes. We had a lot of deliveries in that area. So if you were finding you were having a usability issue in some area, you divert a lot of effort into it for a while, and then you would talk to the customers as this release is focused around usability or performance or something. We found we got a lot better, rather than dribbling it out continuously, which ironically would have got faster for them, we got a lot better response by explicitly calling it out there. But yeah, I used a similar strategy to that.
One question, you are saying you should not release for a particular customer, like you should not ever release.
Well, I didn't for my business.
Okay. Because if the requirement is such a way that when we need to release for only it satisfies the particular customer, then we need to go for the release only for who are the customers.
So the way that I achieved that goal is we sometimes would do a release earlier than we planned. If their feature was ready and there was others not ready, and we would stick over into the stable, and we would release it to everyone with that. But I never did a side branch that just went to them that then I tried to integrate back in later. And I was pretty religious about that, because it was really, because then the problem is you get that customer and they're the one that's happy. I'm not seeing any bugs, I'm going to stay on this. I'll be on this for the next 3 years. You got all kinds of new value you're trying to sell, no, I'm happy on this. And oh, there's one little bug comes in your support and maintenance team, oh my god, and now it skates away, and that branch is more versus the compiler, and one of your vendors, there's a security flaw, and it's much harder.
And you become their IT department.
And then the person that demanded that of me leaves, and then the new person is arguing, why are we in a special branch? Why are we different? And you can't really say it's your fault, so take it on the chin. We were idiots. We did this to you.
So let's just wrap up, I guess. Feel free to stick around and have more discussion, but I just want to thank Rob for his presentation today.
And don't forget we have to pay the lady.
Don't forget to pay. So there's no meetup for high just because vacations and summertime. And the August one is just going to be a social patio drinks type of thing. So, and then we'll get back to regular scheduling in September.
Attend
Manulife meetup.
Yeah, I'll send information about the manual.